I'm back to show you how to assemble the carrot hot rod. First, normally I don't show the step, but I am using chalk to chalk the edges with my little Fantastics. I like to use chalk instead of ink. You'll see this time and time again in my videos, just because I'm not very good sometimes with ink, and ink is permanent and I can erase chalk. So I'm chalking the edges of the bunny before I assemble the pieces. And once I have them all chalked, I'll start piecing together the bunny. And I do usually use a craft mat underneath, but when I'm chalking, I chalk on the piece of paper and then I remove it after I'm done, so I don't get any chalk on my craft mat. So now that I'm done, we go ahead and start assembling it. So we can add the glasses. Now I didn't place them correctly. Yes, I do voiceover. I cannot talk while I'm actually doing the video. It's just challenging for me. It didn't look bad coming down, but you can pull them up a little bit higher if you'd like. They were originally designed to be placed higher. So let's place them up there. Challenging these days. The next we'll piece together the face. So it has two pieces, the back with the teeth, and then I used glitter paper to cut out this the top piece. And then on top of that, I'm going to add the nose. At this point I realized the glasses weren't in the right place, but they look okay. Let's go ahead and add a little dot of glue to add the nose. And I'm going to use my pick-me-up tool, the silhouette pick-me-up tool, to place the nose exactly where it needs to go. Let me nudge it a little bit here. That's what that other side is good for. And then add the ears, the inner ears. I added glue to the actual ear rather than the pieces because it was just easier for me. Especially since these pieces are so small. I kind of pulled up this tooth before I glue on the actual facial piece, the bottom facial piece. And I'm using those are foam dot remnants. So once your foam dot, your pop-up dots are done, you still have foam to use. So I just use that extra pieces. I don't like to waste anything. It works. It's not really seen, so might as well use it if I can get the backing off. I'll just place it where it looks good. Now you could have glued on the head prior to putting all that on, but I forgot to, so we're going to do it now. Well, the reason I have that top piece is to give that little dimension so you can see the head. It gives it a little bit more of a dimension when you have it layered like this. And for the arm, we're only going to glue the top piece. So the reason is that it can slide over the edge of the car once that's done. It just makes it easier. So we're only doing the gluing on the top piece, and then it'll come apart so you can slide it on. That finishes the bunny. And now piece together the tires or wheels, whatever you want to call them. I can call them both. This is what's going to go on the tire pieces once we get that created, but right now we're just piecing them together to get them ready. So I'll put a little rim around the edge. Now I do have it, there's a little overlap so if it's not matched up exactly, it'll still look good for that little outside rim. Then add the middle. In my final photos I don't have it, but I also added a little black rhinestone in the middle just to give it more dimension, but I would do that afterwards. So do that to all 4 tires. There's 2 big ones and 2 small ones. And then in the next step we'll put together the axles so we can attach these to those pieces. So there's not much to this, they're pretty much the same. But I only did 1 of each, and you can do the other 2. So now we're going to put together the axle pieces. Now it's going to fold, as you see that first one. You're going to carefully fold it on the score lines, and the tab kind of separates. That's where the tabs end. And you can't see it because it's black, but there's a bunch of score lines that your machine will cut out, or score, depends on how you do it. I would think that cutting would be easier. Once you have it scored, there's a longer piece in the very back. So we want to add glue to that, not longer piece, wider piece. It's the widest piece. And then you'll fold over the opposite tab and rub it to make sure that it secures. Now you might have to run your hand across it multiple times, and then I went to the table as well to apply pressure, but you don't want to push it too hard because it still is hollow. So now you have that one axle, the longer one, and then we'll glue together the shorter one. So I was doing this twice to hopefully that you can see. Like I said, I'm using black, but that is the widest side that you'll be gluing. And it's at the end, so you can tell. And you'll match up the same size tab. Now the tab is not angled because you'll be able to see the sides, and I don't want you to be able to see that. And you can see that I just apply pressure against the table again to make sure that it holds. You could use a really strong double-sided sticky tape too, like a red line tape. I just use glue. Now we'll start attaching the actual tire panels with the cutouts in them to the axles. So you want to start with the short piece first, the short axle. That's use the smaller tires for the shorter axle and the larger tires for the longer axle. So now you'll see we have little tabs at the end, which I kind of folded back and forth, and you'll slide it in the only way it'll go to the tab folds. And first we want to anchor that largest tab. You'll just fold it over against the panel and hold it. I'd hold it for a few seconds or more depending on the glue you're using. I'm using the Scotch Quick Dry glue. And don't worry about if there's a little glue leakage, because we'll be covering that. Just don't get it too much. Then add glue to all the other tabs, and you'll do the same thing. You want to pull them back and glue them against the tire panel. The most important thing here, just make sure they're all down and glued on, and then you can straighten out the tire a bit. You can also flip it over and apply additional pressure against the table. And then here we're doing the second one similarly. Again, sliding it over and then folding back that largest tab and holding it against the tire panel. And then I was holding it. That's another way to do it. Kind of hold that down while you glue the other tabs. And then hold those. Now I did try just adding glue around the edge and just pulling the tabs down, but it doesn't seem to work as well. Just be careful you don't get too much glue on the outside, because these do have cut up areas that go up to the edge of the tabs. So you don't want to have glue kind of leaking out so you can see it once you get those. The ones I made that were metallic, like the metallic wheel portion of the tire. So now here's the longer axle, and you'll see that I'm doing the same thing again. It gets easier. It's nice because it's just one long piece, and it gives it a little bit more stability once you put together the car. One thing I found when I was doing this, just be careful with the amount of glue you use, because it could curl the paper. Some people use different glues, but you just have to be familiar with your glue and the type of paper you're using, because you don't want them to be kind of curvy when you put them together. You see, I'm not too worried about that glue because I know it's going to be hidden by the panel that goes on top of it. I just don't want it to go beyond the middle. And then we'll put that last one on. Again, when I'm folding the tabs, I'm folding them in like they naturally would be folded on the score lines. And then I'm folding backwards prior to sliding them through, so they're ready to fold backwards for this step. Okay, now that those are assembled, we'll add the actual panels. So I'm not going to talk through the whole thing. Basically what you'll do is put the large tire panels on the large wheels and the small ones on the small wheel. You just want to add glue to the middle and then around the edges. Then usually when I put it on pieces like this, I just put little dots there between. When I put it on a piece like this, I just kind of run my finger around the edge to make sure that I have it centered. And then you can apply pressure this way. This is one of the reasons I like this method of putting the tires on. It was new for my designs, but I used it on 2 designs recently. So I jumped ahead, and now that I have those panels on the axles, because I had some white core paper I didn't want to show, so I'm inking the edges of the wheel, turning them black. And then we can attach the smaller ones and do the same thing. So once we have these on, we'll just put them aside for later. We'll add the tires close to the last step. You don't want to be working with the tires on. It's too difficult with the tires on the car. Again, I chalk the edges. So now here are all the pieces to the car from left to right. And also here are 2 bottom pieces. You'll notice that one is smaller, the right one. I'm going to put that aside because that's a panel for later. Before you start assembling, you want to make sure that they're folded on the score lines. and curved a little bit around those middle pieces. It'll make it easier to assemble. So we're just going to take that bottom piece and we're going to attach the right hand side piece. Make sure you have the pieces arranged the way they should be in the, I have a reference in the PDF. That'll help. So go ahead and attach that first tab to the bottom of the box, and you see you're matching up that section, the bottom edge to the tab fold inside, so that will anchor that piece. So that's the, looking from the front of the card to the back, that's the right hand side, bottom side. Then we'll add glue to the 3 or 4 pieces. It depends how comfortable you are with your glue. You can start small with a couple pieces. You kind of want to attach those tabs to the bottom and aligning the bottom edge at the same time to those tab folds. And then you want to apply pressure. And you'll see it's kind of gently folding a little bit. And then continue with the rest of the tabs. Again, if you want to do 2 at a time until you get it down, then some people prefer that. So you see how I'm just matching up that bottom edge to the tab folds and kind of pushing in from the sides, but also applying pressure to glue the tabs to the bottom of the car. And make sure it's good and secure before you move on. So now we'll attach the next piece on the right hand side. So we'll add glue to that first tab. Then again line up that other piece, making sure the end, it's lined up at the end and also on the edge. And I have a little, that's just a wet paper towel so I can get the excess glue. And once you get that first one secured, and you can see as I'm gluing, I'm still holding the tab. Go ahead and add glue to the next tabs. And then just slowly attach one tab at a time on the inside, making sure that that edge is aligned with the tab fold. And you can kind of feel it with your finger too as you're doing it. I had to flip it over. Just be aware, I mean, you need to figure out what's going to work with your hands. Sometimes different angles and you need to flip things around so it works better for you. Well, then you just continue gluing on the remaining tabs. Now this video is sped up just a little bit, so it does take time. Don't rush it. If you're fast at this, great, but if you're not, take the time and make sure they glue properly. I apologize for the towel, but I'm a messy gluer and I'm always going to have a wet towel when I assemble these projects. And you see as you get to the front, it kind of curls upwards. The back kind of curls in as well. And just make sure everything's nice and secure. And you see the right hand side of the cars coming together. So now we're going to put the left hand side. And the reason we're not going to continue on the right is for the sake of getting your hands in to apply pressure where you need to. I did make a mistake, so that's why you see the tab has a little bit of something on it. So I had to pull it off. I didn't place it right. So we want to place that tab fold so it's aligned with that edge piece, that left, now we're on the bottom again, left bottom side piece. Once that's anchored, go ahead and add glue to the other tabs. And this is similar to the very first piece we attached, it's just the other side. You see, you just slide those tabs underneath and align that bottom edge to the tab folds. Just make sure they're flush in there So this is easier because you can apply pressure against the table. It makes it helpful when you can do that. Not all roundish 3D items that you glue together, you can do that. So this was a stretch doing that many tabs at a time for me, but since you can slide them under, it makes it a bit easier and faster because it can just kind of curve around those edges. And once it's nice and dry, we can move on to the next step. You can see those tabs on the bottom, and we do have that panel to cover it later on. And that's that panel that we can add after we're done. We won't do it now, but if you don't care about covering it, you don't need to. So now we're going to add the next piece. So instead of doing the left-hand side, we're going to now go back to the right-hand side and start adding the middle piece. So for this, I kind of started at the top, but I would recommend in the next step to start in the middle so you can line up that middle piece, because if you're off just a little bit, this middle opening edge will be off. I'm not editing the video, it wasn't that bad, but I would recommend as I do the second piece, making sure you line up the inner tab first and then glue the remaining tabs. So that was the back. Now here's the front. So with this, as you see, I start with the inner one so I can line up that edge. So we have a kind of a clean inner edge. Inner opening, so you don't have really any overlapping there. Because at the end pieces, it doesn't matter. We'll be covering that anyways. If that's off a little bit, that'll be hidden. So the rest of it, we'll just attach that last piece, and we'll do it from the inside to the left-hand side. So we'll attach it to the inside piece first. And again, we're going to start with the inward tab this time, so we can match up that edge. I wasn't thinking the first time I did it. Got too much glue here. So go ahead and match that up, and then you'll match the other tabs up. And you'll continue, you can reach inside and make sure it's flush and make sure those edges are aligned with the tab folds. Sounds like tadpole, but tab folds. Later on, if you do have a little excess ink, I usually just chalk the edges or ink the edges. It's my little trick to hide some of those glue marks if I make a mistake. So here we go again. We're going to start from the middle opening tab and then go towards the front. So the last opening, the last set of tabs is always the most challenging, just because you kind of have to close something and it's sometimes hard to get the right angle or pressure. So I usually do a couple tabs at a time to start, and I'm doing more than that because you have to kind of get your fingers in that first tab and be able to get underneath to apply pressure. So that opening helps. But you know, sometimes, like me, as you can see me fumbling, I'm trying to get the right angle. Once I get it, I'm okay. And then you get that first one anchored. And then it'll help with the remaining ones, and you can reach in. Now, if you feel like you can't do it this quick and the glue dries a little bit on you, just add a little bit more glue. But I think after you've done enough of these, you kind of know how long you take. Sometimes I forget. That's why I made a mistake earlier. I did something not quite right and had to pull it off. Then after that's dry, just continue gluing them. The middle's the easiest because you have that opening and you can reach in really easily. It's just when you get to the ends which makes it difficult. But just take it slow. Once you get to the end, you've got the body of the car completed. Like I said, I'll never say I'm the expert on putting together things. I enjoy it, but I'm finger challenged. Kind of klutzy. Goes to show you anybody can do this. And this fine tip glue applicator really helps to get into those little places. I used to use a normal applicator, but I would get glue everywhere, and then I found these and I thought, I need it. There's a link below if you're interested. It works with the Scotch glue, so just know the bottle that I'm referencing is for use with Scotch glue. Some other glues it doesn't work with. So there it is. We got it completed. Kind of looks like a carrot, no? At least I thought. Okay, so this is a weird assembly part. These go on the front and back. These are big tabs that don't look like tabs, but I did them this way for purpose. We're going to put the smaller one on the front and the larger one on the back. So it's going to cover that front hole and the back hole. The reason I did it like this is too hard really to get your hands in to glue the tabs in it. So you can see how this is situated. So you want to add glue to one of the tabs. You could add it to the bottom first or the top. I'm going to add it to the top, and I'm going to line up that opening edge for that side with the tab fold. And you want to hold and apply pressure and anchor it. And then we're going to glue it onto the bottom as well. I had a little issue there, so I was trying to fix it. That's where I had an issue earlier. So now we'll glue on the bottom part. Now it's really important with these pieces that you apply a lot of pressure, because you're on a, not only is it's kind of a partial bend, but I'm using textured paper, so I have to kind of hold it for a little bit. If you were gluing it inside as a tab, it might work a little bit better, but it really is hard to get your hand in and get the appropriate pressure. So we're putting it on the outside. And these tabs, which don't look good right now, will be covered by the panels we add to it later. You'll see a little portion of the end of it, but it's really not that noticeable. I tried several methods of doing this, so each tab you're going to want to hold them, and hold them for some time before they're secure. I had a couple flip up on me when I wasn't holding them as long. But going back, I mean, I tried other methods, and this is the method that worked. I tried doing it inside differently, because I've glued a lot of things before. So it's what I came up with, good or bad, it worked. So the same thing, the difference is this time we'll do the bottom one first. And again, you're just centering it and aligning it with that bottom edge. Then you can apply pressure that way. If you wanted to do that on the back, you could too. And I always do the opposite first because we're trying to get it centered and anchored so we can glue down those remaining tabs. So I was trying to reach in, but it is a long reach. It's not a huge car, but it is long. So I did try to do this a little differently. I didn't want to tip either. The reason I didn't add the tip this way was because of the length and how you could get your hands in. So we have to work around our limitations. And I have short fingers, by the way. So that doesn't help as well. So I figured if it doesn't work for me, there's others that have small hands like me, it doesn't work. So I want to get it good and secure. Don't make sure that you get the spot right, else you'll have to re-glue it again. And then, like I said earlier, I can ink the edges. And you really only have to ink the long edges because we're putting panels on. I started, so you do those long panels. You don't need to do those other folds. And that just kind of gives it a little bit more texture to it, kind of a textured look, and also hides any extra glue. So now we can kind of curl that bottom panel and glue it on. Because it's curved in the back substantially, you'll want to add a lot of pressure when you put it on. And make sure you're rubbing up there in the bottom parts, and so it doesn't flip off. And I started using my pick-me-up tool, but it's too sharp. So one of my go-tos is a take-out wooden chopstick to apply pressure in places where it's not easy to get my hands. Now we'll add the panels. Make sure you have them situated properly on the right side and orientation before you glue them. I usually, with the wet glue, this was a thicker paper, pattern paper, but just do a really thin bead. Be careful, not all paper is created equal, so you don't want to see the ripples, and not all glue either. So I start on one edge. I'm out of view right now, but start on that one edge, then try to make sure it's centered, and then I get it centered and put it on the other edge, and then apply pressure. You want to make sure that you apply pressure along the whole side, and then you can add the other panels. There's always going to be a little edge because the panel's a little bit smaller than the sides. There's going to be a little bit of edge, so you want to try to center it, especially when you get to the sides towards the top, because you want to be able to see the little edge. There you go. Sorry for going out of view there. Then you just keep on adding all the panels. So there's 2 panels for the top, and then a total of 4 side panels. So now that all the panels are on, we're going to add the stem piece on the back. And there's two pieces. There's that little piece that'll be like a border around the stem, and then the actual stem itself. So I did, because there was a paper, this was a little bit brighter green than I wanted for the stem, I chalked it with black chalk around the edges on the front and back, just to give it a different look. Actually, it'd be fun to emboss it, but I just don't know how much. This wouldn't have handled embossing very well because it was a thinner cardstock and kind of a cheaper quality cardstock too. But the color I liked for the most part for the carrot. So I used my little Fantastics and to do the chalking. And I'm using a chalk. I like a couple chalks, but this chalk is no longer available. It was called Decorating Chalks. It was a company in California that no longer is in business. Getting close to being done with it. The other chalk I like to use is Pebbles. Once I'm done with that, there's little cut lines, and you can kind of see that are actually in the file. They're just guides. They're really, I mean, one's to fold it up, but the other one is kind of a guide. So I'm gonna, you can see the cut lines. I'm gonna kind of fold them in. This is a little bit cumbersome, so I'm gonna try to do my best. But you can play around with them. You'll get it to work. So first I want to curl the stems a little bit. So I just take my handy dandy free chopsticks and just kind of curl the edges, and you can curl them in too, but I kind of curled them out. So when we put them together, it'll have that curled look. And then on the back, you see it's shaped like that. You can, there's one stem that's longer than the other, so they're two longer sides. So I put the longer ones on the top and bottom. It really doesn't matter. It might be better with the shorter on top and bottom, but it's just for the effect. So center it in there and glue it to the back. And you see it kind of folds in. Where now there's another cut line. We're going to kind of fold it in and glue it. Now in this video I use glue. I think I would use pop dots, or not pop dots, the glue dots in the future, or hot glue would be my suggestions. You could also put a double sticky tape down there too to hold them. But the basic premise is you want to kind of fold it in. It doesn't matter if it's really just that one section. We're just trying to fold it in so the stems stay in. Because of the paper I'm using, it didn't do well with the glue. So what you don't see is later on I did actually add glue dots. So you want to glue the shorter pieces together at the base. Or again, I added a glue dot later to hold them together. If you get the gist of what I'm trying to do here, I know it wasn't eloquent about the whole thing, but now you can see once I had them glued together, that those other two longer ones are just kind of hanging there, which is okay, but I put a glue dot in there to hold it. So there you go. And that helped tremendously. It just wasn't a good paper, and I do apologize for getting out of view on this. So just be careful that you're not ripping any of them. I mean, it will come together. It's just really small spaces. So this piece is going to slide over. So you're going to glue one side. And again, you might want to use the stronger glue than I used. This is just was not good paper. And then you're going to kind of pull it apart at the cut line because there's a cut on one side. And then you're going to put it around the base of the stem. So you can't see it yet, but once we move it, you're going to apply pressure. And you can see I'm applying pressure on it. And it's hiding most of those innards. So, and it just creates a little cleaner look on the back. There you go. Just make sure it's glued. I did have to, again, glue that a little stronger because of the type of paper I was using. So now we'll move on to the headlight piece. So there's two little pieces that makes up the core of the light. I did use glitter paper. I would not recommend using it again. It's hard to glue. So if you can see, I scored it on all the folds. Or I should say I folded in all the scores. Then I'm going to apply this little last side piece to that tab. I could have cut it all at once, but it made it really teeny. There were some issues. So I will glue the other side. It basically close it up. And because I'm using, like I said, a glitter paper, the glue takes longer to dry. So I had to hold it for some time. If you're usually using standard cardstock, you probably won't have that issue. I like the look of the glitter paper, but it was very difficult with the size and the gluing on top of the glitter. So add glue to those top, fold in those top little teeny tabs and add glue to them, and then fold over the front part of the light. And try to match up the tab folds with the edges of that top piece. Kind of gently pushing them in, pushing it around from inside to apply pressure to make it, to put it in the shape that it should be. Because it's just kind of creating like a carrot light in the front, like it continues to get pointy. We then do the same on the back. Fold in all the tabs, add glue, and align the top edges to the tab folds. Again, you may have to push it in a little bit on the sides and to match up those edges properly. And once you do get it, because it's closed, you just kind of have to rub your fingers, get it in the right location. I kind of hold it for a moment, and then once I get everything in place, I rub it against the table. And that will apply the additional pressure I will need. And I needed a bit more because of the glitter paper. So, like I said, I don't envision that happening with regular cardstock. So now there's a little edging, kind of creating the light casing. So you just put it on the bottom, glue it onto the bottom edge, and that will align with the folds in the light. And you can just glue it on once you have it glued on. And I just skipped gluing it on. Had an issue with the video. You can go ahead, if you don't get it all the way down, I just added some ink on the bottom edges. But get close to the bottom as possible. And then you can glue it onto the front of the car. And then you'll want to apply pressure. And you can try to do it from within if you can fit your fingers in there. But I kind of just pushed and applied pressure and held it. And again, it's glitter paper, so it took longer to hold. So there it is. I'm going to flip it on the bottom to show you how to add those tires and the axles. So first what I do is put them in places where I think they might go. So you want to flip it over and see if it looks right to you. So it looks like it's in about the right spot. So we'll just glue them one at a time. So I picked up the front shorter one. Add glue in the middle because you don't want it showing on the sides. And because, like I said, that axle is hollow, you'll have to place it as straight as possible and center it so it's on the center of the bottom piece. And then just apply pressure, holding it down. And you can rub slightly along it to make sure it's attached. And then you can flip over and make sure you have that bottom set of tires in the right place. Then you want to just kind of place them there. I'm waiting for the front to dry. You don't want to really move it too much before it's dry. So you'll do the same thing. You'll add glue in the center of it. I suppose you could do it onto the bottom of the box. I did it on the axle. And this is the flattest piece of the axle. I forgot to mention that. And that's the reason for that flat piece, to allow for gluing. And you see I have a little bit of adjustment time, and then I'll apply a little pressure to it. And that, after you've applied pressure, you can flip it over and the tire should be attached, and all you have to do is add the bunny. You can add a couple little rhinestone innards to those tires, but slide on the bunny, or you can glue it, it's up to you. Add some goodies and it's done. Hope you enjoyed this video. Thanks for watching.